They didn't grow up. They were thrown in. Out on the frontier, being a kid didn't mean being protected. It meant pulling your weight, holding your fear, and sometimes burying your own blood. We like to think the West was built by rugged men and legendary gunslingers. But what if we told you some of the hardest, coldest, most unbreakable souls out there were still losing baby teeth? Some loaded rifles before they learned to write. Some rode alone for miles through snow and silence, chasing help that never came. Most had scars, physical or otherwise, before they hit their teens. This isn't about kids these days. It's about the ones who didn't get to be kids at all. This is Beyond the Old West, and these are 10 reasons why frontier children were tougher than most grown men today. Top 1. They started working at 5. At 5 years old, most frontier kids could already carry a bucket of water, collect firewood, and pluck a chicken clean. Some learned to steer a plow by 6, standing barefoot in frozen mud behind a mule twice their size. Their hands were small, but blistered. Their chores weren't optional. If they didn't work, the family didn't eat. And out there, hunger didn't wait. Little boys tended traps at dawn, shaking rabbits loose with numb fingers. Little girls learned to knead dough, patch wounds, and hush crying babies so as not to attract wolves. Or worse. No excuses. Fever. Keep working. Broken toe? Wrap it and keep walking. There were no weekends, no birthdays, no "you're too little." The land didn't care how old you were. Neither did winter, or wild dogs, or fire. A girl named Clara Hale once helped deliver her baby brother during a snowstorm. She was 6. Her mother couldn't move from the cot. The midwife never came. She boiled water, held the lantern, and cut the cord with a carving knife meant for deer. She didn't cry. She cleaned the knife and made cornbread. Some kids on the frontier didn't survive their first 10 years. But those who did, they weren't raised, they were hardened, and 5 was already late. Top 2. They handled death daily. On the frontier, death didn't knock. It walked right in. Kids buried siblings before they learned to spell their names. Mothers died in childbirth. Fathers vanished during hunting trips and came back wrapped in canvas, if they came back at all. Funerals were quiet, if they happened. No black suits, no flowers, just dirt, a pine box, and a silence that went on too long. A boy named Eli Perkins lost his twin brother to fever at age 7. They shared a bed, a spoon, and 1 pair of winter boots. When his brother stopped breathing, Eli sat beside him until dawn, holding his hand. When the sun rose, he told no one. Just dressed, fed the chickens, and went to school like normal. He helped dig the grave that afternoon. No counselor, no day off, no questions. Death was a lesson frontier kids learned early and often. It came fast, didn't wait, and usually took the kindest ones first. Some hardened, others just went quiet. But all of them knew one thing. Out there, if you didn't learn how to carry loss, you wouldn't last long enough to carry anything else. Top 3. They used guns before they could write. Most kids today learn to hold a pencil at 5. On the frontier, some learned to cock a rifle before they could even spell their own name. A boy named Jonah Riggs was 6 when he first shot a coyote. It had gotten into the chicken coop at dawn. His father was out mending a fence. His mother was still asleep. The rifle was taller than him, and the recoil knocked him flat. But the shot hit. Clean. He didn't tell anyone. Just dragged the carcass out by the tail, reset the coop latch, and made breakfast. Guns weren't toys. They were tools. As common as buckets or axes. Kids were taught how to hold them steady, when to aim, when not to. There was no room for mistakes. No oops. A missed shot could mean a dead sibling. A slow draw could mean a broken door and no one left to rebuild it. girls too. 12-year-old Annie Clint once shot a mountain lion that lunged at her younger brother on the trail. She cried afterward, not because she was scared, but because the shot chipped her father's favorite rifle. They didn't shoot to brag. They shot to protect, to feed, to survive. Reading would come later, if they lived long enough for it to matter. Top 4. No doctors, no excuses. There were no clinics, no pharmacies. Most towns didn't even have a doctor, just a traveling sawbones who came once a month maybe. And if he made it, you prayed he was sober. So frontier kids learned to patch themselves. Cut your hand? Boil water, wrap it tight, keep working. Twist an ankle, bite your lip and walk on it until it numbs. One boy in Utah reset his own broken arm using a broom handle and a leather strap. He was 9. Pain wasn't a reason to stop. It was a fact of life. Girls stitched wounds with the same thread they used for dresses. Boys cauterized cuts with hot iron pulled straight from the stove. They chewed willow bark for fever, mixed lard with ash for burns, and packed open gashes with spider webs to stop bleeding. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. A girl named Ruthie Mace lost 3 fingers to frostbite. She was 7. Her mother cried. Ruthie didn't. She just learned to milk the goat one-handed. No one said, "Poor thing." They just made room at the table and passed her the bread with the crust already cut. Out there, hurting didn't make you special. Surviving did. Top 5. They rode alone for miles, no maps, no phone, no one riding behind them. Just a child, a horse, and a destination too far for their size. On the frontier, if someone got sick, help wasn't a phone call away. It was a ride. And if the father was wounded, the mother was tending, and there was only one horse left. The job fell to the smallest one who could stay in the saddle. A girl named Mabel Corwin rode 22 miles through sleet to fetch the nearest doctor. She was 10. Her older brother had fallen into the fire, oil lamp tipped over during supper, skin peeling, screams filling the cabin. Her mother didn't even ask, just saddled the mare and whispered, "Go." Mabel didn't cry. She didn't stop. She rode through the night, lit only by lightning, coat soaked through, one hand clutched to the saddle horn, the other gripping a scrap of paper with the doctor's name. She made it. The doctor didn't. But she rode back anyway. Alone again. These weren't joy rides. These were errands of life and death. And the ones who carried them weren't tall enough to reach the stirrups without help. But once they were up there, they didn't come down until the job was done. Top 6. They buried their own gravediggers were a luxury. Priests too. Out on the frontier, when someone died, you didn't wait for the town to help. You picked up a shovel. That included the kids. A boy named Silas Dean buried his baby sister when he was 8. Fever took her fast. His father was still away driving cattle. His mother was too weak to stand. So Silas dug. 2 feet down because the ground was frozen and the shovel was dull. He wrapped the body in a quilt they used for winter nights, said a prayer he only half remembered, and covered her up before the coyotes caught the scent. No headstone. Just a small wooden cross, nailed crooked. Children weren't shielded from death. They were expected to face it. To lift the weight, literally. Sometimes that meant carrying a wrapped body. Sometimes it meant holding their mother's shaking hand while they both watched the dirt fall. It didn't matter if you were 5 or 15. If you could walk, you could dig. And out there, digging meant love. Digging meant goodbye. Top 7. They saw things. No Child Should Frontier kids didn't just hear about death. They watched it happen. Hangings weren't whispered about. They were public. A lesson. Ropes tied to tree limbs or barn beams, boots dangling, dust still settling. Some were criminals. Some were just unlucky. Children were told to look away, but they didn't. Not really. Not when the body still twitched. They saw what starvation did to neighbors, eyes sunken, ribs showing, boiling belt leather just to chew on something. They watched families fall apart after one bad winter. A baby stopped crying. A father stopped talking. A mother stare through the wall like she was somewhere else entirely. A boy named Amos Cutter once saw a man shot in the neck over a stolen chicken. Middle of the street. Midday sun. The blood steamed on the ground. Amos was 6. He stood there until someone carried him off. He never spoke about it. Not then. Not ever. They saw wolves pick clean the bodies of settlers who got caught in the snow. They saw fire take homes, and people too slow to get out. No explanations, no therapy, just silence. The kind that follows you into sleep and stays. And maybe the worst part wasn't what they saw. It was how quickly they learned not to flinch. Top 8. They were expected to act grown. There were no gold stars, no good jobs, no soft voices telling them it was okay to cry. Frontier kids were expected to act like adults, long before they understood what that meant. You broke something? Fix it. You lost something? Find it. You saw something that scared you? Forget it and move on. A girl named Hattie Brewster took over cooking for a 6-person household when her mother fell ill. She was 9. No recipes, no help. Just a wood stove, raw ingredients, and hungry faces waiting. No one praised her. No one asked if she was okay. They just ate. Boys ran traps before sunrise, hauled feed, loaded rifles. If the cow died, you buried it. If the roof leaked, you climbed up and fixed it. Even if you were scared of heights. Even if your hands were shaking. Crying didn't stop the frost. Hesitating didn't stop the wolves. And asking, "Why me?" only made you slower. Adulthood wasn't earned. It was assigned. If you could hold a tool, remember instructions, and keep your mouth shut, then congratulations, you were old enough. Old enough to carry water. Old enough to carry wood. Old enough to carry grief. No one called it unfair. Because on the frontier, growing up wasn't a journey. It was a sentence. Top 9. They fought like adults. They weren't taught to pick fights. They were taught to end them. On the frontier, violence wasn't a last resort. It was a tool, like an axe or a shovel. If you couldn't defend your livestock, your siblings, or yourself, then you didn't get to stay. Kids learned early. Some practiced with sticks, some with knives, most with rifles too long for their arms. But they got stronger, quicker, meaner, if they had to be. A boy named Luke Harlan shot a man when he was 13. The man had grabbed his sister by the arm, called her a name, and wouldn't let go. Luke didn't hesitate. One shot through the chest, clean. He didn't run, just stood there while the sheriff nodded once and walked away. Justice was simple out there. If no one else could deliver it, you did. Girls fought too. Some learned to throw a hatchet better than any farmhand. One girl in Kansas broke a raider's jaw with a cast iron skillet. She was 11. He didn't get back up. These weren't brawls on playgrounds. These were life or death decisions made by hands still too small to grip a full-size holster. They didn't fight because they wanted to. They fought because there was no one else. And because in some towns, the only line between chaos and family was a kid who knew how to pull the trigger. Top 10. Childhood didn't exist. They didn't call them children. They called them hands, helpers, extra mouths, or just by their first names. Short, fast, easy to yell across a field. There were no toys, no lullabies, No stories before bed, unless it was about someone getting lost in the snow and not coming back. Playtime was accidental, 5 minutes between chores, or a joke whispered while skinning rabbits. Laughter wasn't forbidden, just rare and short-lived. A boy named Will Cotter once asked if he could skip milking the cow for his birthday. He was turning 8. His father stared at him for a long time and said, "You think that cow knows what day it is?" That was the end of that. Frontier kids didn't grow up. They were put to work, pushed to endure, expected to obey, and left to figure out the rest on their own. Emotions were a luxury. Imagination was a risk. They buried their youth alongside everything else, under frozen ground, beside siblings, behind barns and broken tools. We look back and call it a simpler time. But for the children who lived it, it wasn't simple. It was survival. And by the time they were old enough to be called grown, they already were. We romanticize the frontier. We picture brave men, wide landscapes, and quiet strength under the sun. But in that silence, there were children, working, bleeding, riding alone, digging graves, pulling triggers, and most of all, growing old before anyone called them grown. They didn't complain. They didn't write journals. They just endured. Their names are forgotten. Their stories barely whispered. But if you listen close, you can still hear them. In the creak of a saddle, the snap of a frostbitten branch, the kind of silence that's too heavy for any childhood to survive. This is beyond the Old West, where we don't just tell history, we drag the truth out from under the dust. If you're still here, maybe you feel it too. Subscribe, follow, stay close. Because out here, the next story is always waiting, and some of them don't like to be left alone too long.